Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Finance and Safety Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Got a motion by Solom and a second by Manti. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 2 is public input. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? So moved by Vilhauer. Second by Albertson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is council consideration of a professional services agreement for design and bidding services associated with the wastewater treatment facility administration building with HDR Inc. in the not to exceed amount of $364,300. Look for a motion and second for approval. So moved by Manti. Second. Second by Sorry. Any discussion? All right, I would like to let Colin introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. So through a competitive proposal selection process in 2017, HDR and Al's here with HDR completed a space evaluation study for the wastewater treatment facility administration building. They made their determination and recommendations based on that study, and going through this, we did decide to stick with HDR for this. They gave us a proposal here for a not to exceed amount of $364,300. The city did budget originally $473,400 for this year for this exact reason, which leaves a savings of $109,100 left on the table. Which will be used in different areas, but I'll hand it over to Mike now.
Yes, this amount is based upon HDR's rate structure and actual estimated hours of work to be performed. The budget was a percentage of the conceptual opinion of probable construction costs. So as mentioned, HDR did compete for the space evaluation. They did complete that evaluation on time and in budget. And they then provided their recommendations of the conceptual layout to the Public Works Committee on May 16th, 2018. Al Erickson with HDR is here with us tonight to answer any questions about this proposal that you have. We are planning to budget for this construction of this in 2020, and ultimately the bidding process will determine the project costs. And but given the partial collapse of the operation shop, we do want to keep this project moving along. And at this point, I think we believe we'll complete the project within our current rate structure. So, any questions for Al about the proposal?
Does anyone have any questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
I'm not arguing, but that's, significantly below what was budgeted. And any comments as to why it's so much less than what was budgeted?
Well, when we did the concept, we weren't certain exactly when this was going to be constructed, if it was going to move forward this next year. And then actually it was, since it was in the planning stage where you were earmarking money to see if it could be done, we wanted to make sure we weren't on the low side and mess up the project later on by not having enough funds. So we put in a basic 10% is what we did, which is quite typical where we would do that. And then as we were notified that it was going to move forward this year, then we could sit down and really put the time and effort into making sure the hours fit the exact scope of the project and the concept layout that was done. So with that, it brought it down, and we know the funding is there for it. Now we can give real numbers, and that is a not to exceed number. So if we can save money as we go along, you'll see that actual number. So we would not exceed that without a prior approval and without justification.
Any other questions? Can't have Al come all the way up here from Sioux Falls and not have questions for him. So, well, this is good, and HDR's done other projects for us in the past, quite a few, actually.
Right.
And so we're familiar with the work, and it all looks good to me. This is a recommendation to the full council, so this will go on the it's basically the name, consent agenda, unless someone pulls it off at the council meeting. Councilman Albertson?
I have a question. Who supervises the building of this and so on? Will it be you or the general or what, who's?
No, typically it would be HDR that would be doing it, and it would be somebody, it probably would not be me, just because it's gonna be an architectural person.
Yeah, no,
that's
I
got-
didn't necessarily mean you.
And I would be the project manager, being consistent with what, all the projects that I've been doing projects here since, I don't know, 94, I think, something like that. But to maintain that consistency, I'd be the project manager, but we'd have a construction resident that does buildings of this type that would be up here. And in some cases, we use local subs when it makes sense for doing like civil work and that type of stuff. So whatever's the most cost effective for the project.
Okay.
Councilman Vilhar?
Not trying to put anybody in the spot, but I know, Mike, you've been before us a couple different times with the ideas, the plans, some cost estimates, and I think we were somewhat taken aback by the dollar amount, and now that we're seeing quite a bit less as far as architect fees being budgeted, so that means the estimated cost should come in quite a bit less than what we were seeing originally. Is that a fair statement?
It would be our goal that as we go through this design process, right now the budget number has got a significant portion of contingency in it because you don't really know what you're designing. So that would be our goal, is to work together to come up with a structure that meets that conceptual layout, but work together to reduce those costs as much as possible. And there's significant contingency in there, but once the design is completed, then we'll have actual quantities of materials and have a better estimate, and then we'll be able to have a much tighter opinion of probable construction cost. Right now, we're in the state water plan for sufficient funds for worst case scenario, but we're working towards the best case scenario.
But final review sets by the end of May of this year, correct?
That's correct, in time for budgeting.
Right, yeah, perfect. Good deal. Any other questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5 is council consideration of change order number 3, final, for the wastewater treatment facility primary digester rehabilitation project number 1612 with PKG Contracting for a decrease of $271,926.58. I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Vilhauer and second by Albertson. And I'll let Colin introduce this one as well.
Thank you, Mayor. This project's been going on since 2016, when it was originally, well, actually 2015, December of 2015 was when the original contract went to HDR for design. And then it was awarded actually in 2017 to the...
H.R. Green.
Oh, yes, sorry. And we awarded the contract to PKG Contracting of Fargo in 2017. The work has been done since September of this year, and they actually requested an increase of their profit for the project, considering this huge decrease. The contract does allow for that, so we did negotiate with the contractor, city staff. We had Matt in the room. We had our consultant in the room, and we ended up coming to an agreement of $23,120 for increasing their profit on the large portion that was not done. This is kind of standard if there's a large change in work being completed or performed. I guess it still ended up having a decrease of almost 72,000, and this does not change the contract days. We were just working through this last little bit.
Okay, are there any questions? Councilman Albertson?
Colin, had it been the other way around, would they have said, it's okay if it had come in overpriced, as opposed to under, you know what I'm saying? It's great when I can see it's okay to do probably, but had it been the other way around, would they have said, well, that's the way it goes, or?
I can say we would have attempted that. Both sides do have to agree to something in that, as the agreement clearly states. We would push for that on our end for a decrease if it did go over the contract amount by a significant amount, as this is under. And I'm sure we would have came to some agreement, but this is pretty unique for how much work we actually did take out of the original scope. It gets complicated. That's, I guess, the easy way to say that, but yes, we would try to do that.
Well, you would expect economy of scale with a large project. You get a better discount. So if we significantly reduce the scope of a project, we wouldn't expect them to have the same slim profit margin that we would on a larger project. So that's why we built that into our negotiation.
Change orders, usually they're up, not down, so.
Right, yes. We were lucky that we were able to get by without having to do this big piece. So, any other questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 6 is council approval of the Community Rating System, CRS, annual recertification report, and authorization for the mayor to sign the associated recertification documents. And Colin, would you like to introduce this? We're starting to sweat, Brandy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
And for the record, Councilman Bueller has joined us.
So I'm just going to give a brief introduction, and I'm going to hand it over to Brandy right away. But this is just our community rating system, annual recertification report through FEMA. And I'm going to hand it over to Brandy to kind of fill you in on what that means and where we stand with it.
Okay, and we're talking about floodplain management for anyone who doesn't know what CRS is. I'm sure Brandy will explain that.
Yes, and the CRS for that too is the community rating system, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So summing it up as floodplain management is a lot easier for everyone to follow. Okay, so I have a short presentation, and so every year we've been a part of the CRS. We've been certified as a community since 2017, May 1st. So then every year we do an annual recertification, and so that's the process that we're going through now. And it's just a matter of, I'll follow the presentation. We meet the criteria for a CRS Class 8 rating, and then which that means that we have a 10% discount in the premiums for flood insurance policies after May 1st of 2017 that are issued or renewed within the special flood hazard area. So then when you're a part of the CRS program, you have certain responsibilities that you have to follow, the annual recertification being one of them, also designating a community CRS coordinator, which is the hat I wear for this, and then cooperating with the CRS specialist for your verification procedures. Once you apply, then they come and do a verification visit, and we're past that being in the program. Recertifying and then advising FEMA of modifications, which actually will be included with this recertification. If you guys remember a couple months back when we updated our floodplain ordinance to allow for the base or the freeboard to be just measured from the lowest finished floor rather than from the highest or the foundation, and to keep it consistent with how they regulate it. And then keeping elevation certificates on file, and then keeping necessary records for activities that we're getting credit for, and ensuring that projects are compliant with federal and environmental and historic preservation requirements, and then participating in the cycle verification process. So currently being a a grade 8, yeah. I was thinking level, yeah. Our activities that we are receiving credit for are that we are maintaining elevation certificates for new or substantially improved construction, advising people inquiring to purchase flood-prone property of the flood hazards, providing links on our website of the floodplain information that we have available, applying additional regulatory flood data, enforcing floodplain management provisions, and employing staff credited for their CFM and who have attended credited courses. The mayor and myself are CFMs, and then Ken Buchels, the building official, has went to different training courses. So that's good just to have on staff and for continuing education. Enforce erosion and sediment control and water quality, sending notice to repetitive loss areas about property protection, flood insurance, and financial assistance, which is part of our annual recertification as well, which is also nice because it gets people involved to make them think about protecting their property from flood hazards, being that they're informed that there's repetitive loss properties nearby and they're within the area. So it kind of makes them think of precautionary measures they could take. Yes, Glenn?
Maybe it's self-explanatory. Will you explain what a repetitive loss area is?
Any property that has two or more claims within, Mayor, is it 10 years?
I think it's 10 years, yeah. And the claim exceeding a certain amount.
And currently in Watertown, we have 23 repetitive loss properties. So those are things for, if they're something to look into, would be if we can receive grants that would help with mitigating properties that are in that situation. And then floodplain management plan's annual progress report, which is also a part of what is presented to you. It's a requirement that the city council and then the media and then our state NFIP coordinator, which is our National Flood Insurance Program coordinator, that they are all informed of this progress report. So this is based on our Cottington County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan, which we adopted last February 2nd of 2017. And some of the flood action items outlined in that plan, which then we just stay consistent with our progress report for the CRS, are the Mahoney Creek Dam project, the Broadway Bridge replacement, 3rd Avenue Bridge replacement, contour mapping, Roby Creek drainage improvements, Big Sioux River drainage improvements, and the 10th Avenue North urban systems. So these are just projects that are either we've made progress on or are still within the plans of trying to implement, and that they would be beneficial for our floodplain management. And then all in all, you might wonder why we participate in a program like this and the benefits of it. And it would be for the reduction of flood insurance premiums for residents and businesses, the enhanced public safety aspect, We can evaluate the effectiveness of other flood programs against state and nationally recognized benchmarks. Training and technical assistance in designing and implementing credited flood protection activities through the CRS at no charge. They're a good resource too if there's any questions on how we can improve our rating and different activities that we should be implementing. And then public outreach activities to educate community members, and then motivation to implement flood protection programs during the dry years so that we are always being aware of what damage a flood could have on the community and trying to mitigate that before that would happen.
All right, are there any questions for Brandy? Councilman Vilhar?
I think I've asked this question before. When this gets submitted, this report is taken seriously versus just rubber stamped and thrown on a shelf someplace, never to see the light of day again. Is that a fair statement?
Right. Yeah. Throughout the year, we are always trying to, the credits or the activities that we're being credited for now, we are always trying to implement, like with the public outreach, for example, the mayor and I gave a presentation to the realtors about the discovery map after FEMA has done their preliminary updates to our maps.
I guess my question was not what we do with it on this end, but when this is submitted to, FEMA, is that where it goes?
It goes to ISO, and they're the insurance rating. And they do. They don't rubber stamp anything.
Okay.
They stay on us pretty well.
Okay.
Yep, and they even review it to the point where they'll send elevation certificates back if it's missing certain criteria, where they really are evaluating it. So then that's on our end too. Before we send it out, I mean, they give us what we should be receiving for elevation certificates or anything, and doing our due diligence before we send it as well, so that they're not having to send back.
Okay.
And so we're being.
One of the items that you mentioned up there was the Mahoney Creek Dam feasibility study, and I know when because there was a meeting a few of us attended last spring, and the whole process is subject to the Corps getting funding for a portion of this. Do we have any idea where that process is on the Corps' side of things?
I can speak to that. I get periodic phone calls from the Corps of Engineers checking in on how we're doing, and they're probably going to request another letter from us that they do every year, that do we still want to do this and want to proceed with this? Are we serious about floodplain management for our community? And are we willing to stick our neck out to protect our community? And, I have to answer yes. Obviously, we're a community that floods. Periodically, we've experienced in most people's memory some very, very significant flooding. And it is easy in a dry year to forget about it, and then you have a couple dry years in a row. You think you're not at risk anymore. We're still at risk. And so we can't let this sleep. And that's why the CRS program exists, to keep people awake and aware and actively protecting the community. As communities grow, you need to be mindful of what you're doing. So we haven't proceeded with the flood control study that the Corps needs to do. They need to be authorized by Congress to have the money to do that, and it seems like every time you turn around there's another hurricane somewhere else, or the fires in California are probably going to result in flooding now. There will be another big flood over there, and we get pushed to the back and pushed to the back and pushed to the back. But we haven't forgotten about it, and it hasn't gone to the
I guess
back of the
my
shelf.
question more so was, have they forgotten about it? It sounds like
No, they have not. They have not, no. And I know they would like to finish up with us. I understand they understand our frustration too. But there's only so much money available in our country, and they got to put it where it's needed most.
Yeah, and they, when we went on that little trip, how long ago was that now? Like last summer. There was lobbyists that would go back, for Kristi Noem and John Thune had lobbyists, that's what the staff that came and, were interested in wanting to relay information back to them, I assume.
Right, and it is important to the Corps of Engineers to know that our community hasn't forgotten about the work. They don't want to embark on it if the money appears and then find out that, oh, we changed our mind, by the way. We don't care anymore. Go ahead and flood. Any other questions? Every year at the home show, we bring a map that shows the floodplain. We also bring a map that shows the projects that are going on in our community. And I like working the home show booth, get to talk to people. People like looking at that map. And when you overlay the floodplain on it, it always sparks a lot of conversation. And that conversation is good. I mean, we need to remember we are a community that floods. And I think more information is good. It's good to know where our floodplains are, where we think the vulnerable spots are, so that we look at it appropriately when those areas want to develop.
And that's something too within this last year that we have the LiDAR data available now, which is flown by a plane, and so it's all terrain elevations. So that's non-regulatory at this point because FEMA hasn't adopted those maps. They haven't done the update yet, but they've been able to provide us with that information. So that's been really helpful, and for either developers, homeowners, realtors, anybody that's interested in that information, that we have it and it's available and can be beneficial to use.
Right, and the term LiDAR, it's referring to elevation data, which is more accurate than the data that we had before for contours and ground elevations. And having better ground elevation data leads to better information about which areas would flood. So FEMA uses that information. Any other questions? Did I get an action, motion and second for approval? No. Okay. Looking at the wrong person. Moved by Bueller to second by Manti, authorizing me to sign this, right? I'm signing it, not you.
Yep, you do.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
All right, item number 7 is old business. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? We do have a reason to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2. So I'll look for a motion and second. And before I do that, though, I do not expect to take any action when we come out. So is there a motion and second to go into executive session? Moved by Manti, second by Bueller. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.